All right, good evening, and welcome to the March 24th town meeting. And I'd like to begin by asking the clerk to call the roll.
John Donovan. Here. Michael Hurley. Jay Lipp. Gaylord Meyer. Here. Eric Sudman. Here. Pete Ambrose. Here. Catherine Burstein. Here. Nathaniel Schindler. Jeff Steele. Yep. Keith Varian. Here. Ed Bateson. Here. Laura Devlin. Here. Hank Ferentz.
Here.
Dave McKenzie. Here. Mary McCullough. Heather Dean. Present. Joe DiMartino. Here. Bill Gerber. Here. Joe Palmer. Here. Cindy Waldron. Here. Bill D'Amica. Josh Garskoff. Here. Lauren O'Brien. Ruth Smay. Carol Way. Julie Gottlieb. Alan Marks. Here. Sheila Marmion. Here. Jay Wolk. Here. Liz Zezima. Here. Jen Hochberg. Here. Kevin Hopkins. Here. Eric Newman. Here. Phil Pierce. Here. Hal Schwartz. Here. Kathy Braun. Here. Alex Durrell. Here. Jason Lee. Here. Tom McCarthy. Here. Jeff Milarano. Here. Pam Iacono. Here. Ellen Jacob. Here. Laura McCardle. Here. Carol Pontrelli. Here. Chris Timniak. Here. Brian Caffarelli. Hi, Brian Farnan. Here. Ray Newberger. Bill Perugini. Here. Bruce Ryan. Here.
All right, I'd like to welcome Dan Caruso, our probate judge, up to the microphone to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, if you'd stay standing just for a moment of silence. All right, thank you. Now, Judge Caruso would like to make an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And I appreciate this point of personal privilege. Though I've not had occasion to come back to the RTM since I sat here in 1985 when Jackie Durrell was first selectman. See Alex over there. Joe McGee was moderator. The pleasure of serving with people such as Ruth Smay, Rita Shannon, Jill Kelly, Nello Ceccarelli, Pauline Stanky, and a host of my teachers, including Jack Strauss, Phil Myman, John Howard, and Dick Gripko, and of course Ed Bateson. But our new Ed Bateson is on this side of the aisle, and I know he's proud of you. But the RTM function remains as vital today as it did when it took over its role as the voice for each citizen and as the leaders of our town. And that's why I come to you tonight for your help. When the first selectman was wise enough to form the 375th Anniversary Committee with Town Clerk Betsy Brown and Bob Hojanacki of Bankwell, and kind enough to ask me to join on it, we sought a means by which to celebrate the town and who and what we are, besides just one of the oldest settlements in this nation. So we decided to meet an immediate need with a spirit commensurate with our blessings and decided to launch a historic food drive. Food drive designed to help those homeless, the hungry at home amongst us and who are most worthy of our assistance. And this historic 375th food drive will be held on Saturday, April 26th, and Sunday, April 27th, at Fairfield Ludlow High School. And we urge all members of this community to bring their non-perishable foodstuffs to the school at that time. I'd also ask you to go to our website, which will have a list of those items most needed by people in their homes, the most convenient items and the most needed sizes, and to deliver them on that weekend. And I'm pleased to announce that just as we are not just individuals, but members of so many important groups and organizations, that we are joined by partners in this endeavor, and those include our churches, our synagogues, our public and private schools, our universities, members of our business community, and all our local clubs. They're going to each be conducting their own separate food drives, which they'll bring to us at Ludlow at that time. So there are many ways for people to become involved, and this drive will benefit 4 organizations, those being Fairfield Zone, Operation Hope, and certainly I'd be remiss if I omitted saying how much hard work and how grateful we are for Carla Miklos and her leadership on that. We'll also benefit the Bridgeport Rescue Mission, the Thomas Merton House, and a Project from the Heart. And amongst them, these organizations weekly provide hundreds of meals for people in their homes and have sent thousands of care packages to our troops overseas. And I ask you to join us by donating your time, by donating food, and if, in lieu of that, donating some money. We've made it convenient to do that. If you check our website at FFLD Food Drive 375, that is a good indication of what we're all about. We've designed for that day at Ludlow to make the lines short, but to give enough time for all of us to contemplate the benefits we have and why we're doing this with our families. We'll gladly accept food gift cards from your favorite market, but if you choose to give cash, we've teamed up with ShopRite and Stop and Shop, with whom we can buy their gift certificates at a 10% discount, enabling us to further leverage our community spirit. Those monies can be made through our payments through our partner, the Eunice Denny Burr chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution, who are kind enough to lend us their support and involvement. Again, all the churches, synagogues, clubs, schools, public and private, and clubs, and many others will be organizing their own drives to contribute. So there are many ways. What I'd ask you to leave, when you leave here today, to consider is this. We need volunteers, and we need you as the leaders of this community to help us spread the word for this important endeavor. Again, you can like us on Facebook. That's a great way. Tell your family and friends. And if you would like to volunteer and bring out the rest of the family and all the other families in your constituency and throughout the town and throughout the community, because it's not just a Fairfield event. If you go to our website again, you'll find a convenient way to sign up. We accept all volunteers, and we're most grateful for them. And thus I ask you to join us in this historic food drive as we celebrate our first 375 years by doing what's most important, helping our neighbors. And thank you for your time, and I know thank you for all the help you'll give to members of our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judge Caruso. And for anybody who didn't get a chance to write down the web address, it's ffldfooddrive375.org. All right, the second item on the agenda is to consider and act upon the minutes of the regular meeting held on February 24th. Representative Dean. Is there a second? Representative Iacono. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none. All in favor of accepting the minutes as presented signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Item number 3 on the agenda is to hear a report for the Not-for-Profit Committee. And I see Mr. DeWitt has just joined us.
Good evening. Where would you like?
Please come over here.
Thank you. You're getting work. Good evening. My name is Chris DeWitt. I'm a Board of Finance member, and I'm also the chairman of the Not-for-Profit Committee. And I know Madam Speaker McCulloch asked me a couple of weeks ago to give a quick overview of what not-for-profits are in the budget. And we've given a recent recommendation to the Board of Selectmen to review that. So we can handle this however you guys want. I have a quick overview. I think you've all got some slides. And we can have question and answer session, whatever is most informative for you. I'm here to help you guys out more than anything else. So to start with just a little bit of history, the actual committee that is still standing today was formed by Ken Flato, last administration in 2010, to address multiple Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance issues that we had with a lack of process for not-for-profit entities. Our initial recommendations were presented to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance prior to the start of the 2013-2014 budget process. Some of those recommendations were implemented. They're in here. We'll discuss those a little bit later. What I call final recommendations have been made to the Board of Selectmen this year, January 29th. And I say final recommendations in so much that we are going to not go any further forward as a committee until we have recommendations from the Board of Selectmen and the First Selectman as to how to proceed. And just as a data point, why we even are talking about not-for-profit is that it's approximately $775,000 of the budget. So you tally all those individual numbers up, it is about $775,000. So it's not inconsequential, right? So the committee, pretty much standing from the beginning. I'm the chairman. Ms. McCarthy-Vahey was the Board of Selectmen representative. Ken Brockfeld was Board of Finance representative, again, as well as I. Ms. Julie Gottlieb, who's maybe here somewhere, she was one of the RTM representatives, as well as Mary McCulloch. So, to start, what I've listed here, and I won't go through all of these things and bore you guys with all the details, but there's 2 levels of recommendations. So, when we did our first recommendations to the 2013-2014 budget process, there were 2 tiers. Tier 1 was the things that we thought we could enact very quickly, things that we thought were relatively easy to accomplish, and again, things that we could all come to closure very quickly on and move ahead. Tier 2 were longer-term recommendations that have not yet been fulfilled and have led to the recommendations for this year. So the first one, and again, a lot of words on a piece of paper here, but that first recommendation, we recommended that the budget director require an application for all not-for-profit entities. Now, what we've done, this has been enacted, we've sent an official notification since this budget year started, 2013-2014, with a formal application. So the application has come in for all the not-for-profit entities that you'll see in the budget book. You are required to have an IRS determination letter, list of your current board members. You have to have a latest financial statement if your revenues are in excess of $500,000. This was brand new. All the entities, and I think there's 3 of them, that have excess revenues of $500,000. And then a completed budget package, which is a very simple thing, frankly, for us, because it usually comes down to pretty much one number. But there's some background that most of the entities usually present. The next recommendation was that we wanted to partner with the town. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one. I really want to get to the recommendations from this year. I wanted to get through these because the first one was enacted already by the budget director. The other ones have yet to be enacted. The bottom line was that our Tier 2 recommendations for the original was that the town designate a person or a group and create a new group that will review these agencies. Now, one of the things that came from this long, arduous process was that, and I can only speak for myself, I don't have the skill set to speak for any of these not-for-profit entities. They all give something to the town. They, frankly, all in their own rights, have merit, obviously, and when they prove to us, which most of them have, that they add value or have create benefit, or create value, I should say, for the town, that we should fund them, especially when there's no comparable town entity. So that was one of our big recommendations going forward, and I think you'll see that when we talk about the next page, which was the final recommendation this year, you'll see that we've kind of brought these things together, come to some big conclusions, and again, had the final handoff to the first selectman, or to the Board of Selectmen. So we're on the next to last page, I believe. I should have numbered these, I apologize. So, not-for-profit committee recommendations for 2014. Again, this is January of this year. Create criteria and objectives for not-for-profit partnerships. Without having some kind of criteria or some kind of objective, our not-for-profit entities have come back to us many times and said, you keep saying you want us to partner, you want us to add value, but we don't know what we're adding value to. You tell us what you'd like us to do, and we will go ahead and tell you how we can fulfill that obligation. Not as easy as it sounds, right? Especially when you have different entities trying to provide the same service, or have an outside entity providing a service that might be duplicated by the town. This is the big one, and this is probably where we should spend a little time. The first selectman, as part of the regular budget process, shall recommend one lump sum amount for non-mandated not-for-profit contributions. Now, I think you're all familiar, well, some of you have not been through a budget process yet, but when we vote on the Board of Education budget, we vote on one big number. And then that number just goes off and is controlled by the Board of Education. We talk about some of the individual line numbers in there, but we really vote on that one big number, 151 million, whatever it's going to be this year. Our recommendation is that we do the same thing for not-for-profit entities. Because we do spend, and again, this year, this is still the old process, we have spent in prior years quite a lot of time with individual not-for-profit organizations coming in and telling us about their merits, when again, we really don't have a group of subject matter experts, I'd say. I can tell you I don't think the Board of Finance as a whole has enough subject matter expertise to comment on all of the 14 or 15 entities. So our recommendation is that there be one number allocated for the whole. Now, Some would say that might take away from the process. Some would say it would add to the process. By not, I don't think by any means we're trying to limit the conversation, but this number as a whole has a lot more bearing on the whole budget than the individuals, right? When we say, let's take 5% from everybody, it's a lot different taking 5% from the largest entity and the smallest. The largest being $325,000 this year, and the smallest being, I think, $3,420. So when we lump this into one sum and have some kind of subject matter expert board, if you will, or committee that can speak to where the money should be properly allocated, then I think we can have a better conversation. By the way, I think it's Greenwich, correct me if I'm wrong, this is McCarthy Vahey, votes their not-for-profit giving on a percentage of their total budget. Is it Greenwich, or am I thinking of a different, there was one town. One of the towns and I apologize, I don't have that data, actually takes their total budget at the end of the day and allocates a fixed percentage, 10%, 7%, to not-for-profit entities. Again, in support of that, the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and the RTM would vote on this one lump sum, but would not vote on how the money would to be allocated or which organizations would receive funding. Decisions on allocations would be made by an independent third party, either a volunteer appointed party or a professional charitable foundation. I don't know what I want to add to that. The committee felt that there's probably a better way to have the discussion about these entities as a whole. Maybe even outside the budget process. That would be, frankly, my druthers. Have that allocation discussion outside of the budget process, and then when we, as a body, or we three, Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, RTM, vote on that one number, that allocation is simply just math. This committee or foundation would establish formal criteria to be followed, such as eligibility requirements, purpose and use of funds, and performance and financial benchmarks. So this gets to my, what's the word I'm looking for? Cost-benefit analysis. So today, we vote on a budget, we allocate this money, and for all intent and purpose, that money's allocated out to everyone, and they use it, and we just kind of hope that the money's being used for things being, for services being provided to Fairfield. We would like to further expand this group, this committee, to make sure and look at these funds and say, so I've allocated you your first $100,000. How is this money being used to the good of Fairfield? Have a little more benchmarking, is your money being used efficiently, and is it the best use of frankly, of taxpayers' money for not-for-profit entities? Continue the existing budget initiation process as established by the budget director, which is what I spoke about before. Everybody sends in their data, minimum $500,000 gets an audited statement, and establish an open application process by the committee or foundation. That's one of the things that we attempted to speak about is the entities that we have on our not-for-profit list have been there quite a while. Some of them have been there just forever. There's no formal process today to add or delete an entity. So we really felt that this new committee, or whatever you want to call it, should have some process established to, again, add or delete an entity for given, within a given set of rules. And no, I just fire hosed you with a bunch of data. I don't know if there's any questions or, yes, please. I don't know what your process is, Mr. Ferrant, so don't let me throw you off here.
Representative Marmion.
No. Next mic.
Sheila Marmion, District 6. First of all, thank you for your work. Thank you for the committee's work. I didn't get the slides, so I didn't have a lot of the background, but I tried to pick up from what you were saying. I have a couple of concerns. We stood here a year ago when budget season was upon us, and we went through the nonprofits, and we heard the Board of Finance say, you know, our decisions are fairly random in terms of how we're making decisions. We don't have any criteria. This is a shot in the dark. We need the committee, the nonprofit committee, to meet and really push this through so that we're not in the same position a year from now. So here we are a year from now, and I'm very concerned because I feel to a certain extent that the committee is passing the buck. You were charged to make some decisions. I was hoping that you would set criteria for us, and I don't feel like we're in a good place going into the budget season. It's going to be contentious, and I think all of these nonprofits are being done a disservice, frankly. They all deserve, I think they all provide services, great services, funding, but we don't have criteria. It's just not a good place to be. And then when you say, you know, create a new committee, it's like, well, where are we going to find the people with the expertise? Is there going to be a cost related to doing that? I don't have expertise in hazardous waste. I don't have expertise in land management, but we're asked to look at these issues and make decisions as members of the RTM. So I just want to express that I'm disappointed in this process. I'm not sure that we're in a better place.
Representative Ambrose.
Oh, sorry.
Peter Ambrose, District 2. Thank you, Mr. DeWitt, for your presentation.
Welcome, Mr. Ambrose.
I don't wish, as a RTM representative, to abdicate what I feel is my ability to partake in the discussion and to listen to the committees and to ultimately, because it's our tax dollars that are at stake here, make the decision. I think it's an issue of passing the buck when you, in fact, put it in the hands of an outside party to make a decision that really is our decision to make. And I think, well, I strongly disagree with that concept. And I wish to retain the process by which we're able to evaluate and make recommendations or partake in the discussion, which I think is part of our responsibility. And I agree with Representative Marmion's position in this wholly. Thank you.
Representative Way.
Thank you. Carol Way, District 5. Thank you, Mr. DeWitt, and to the whole committee for the work that you did do. But, and I won't reiterate what has already been said because I agree completely with both Sheila and Peter. But I look at it from another point of view, too, because I worked as development director for one of these nonprofits, and for, I think it was 5 or 7 years, I wrote the proposal that came in, and there was a particular format that needed to be followed. There was an evaluation that had to be given the following year, a written evaluation of what took place. Numbers had to be put into it in terms of numbers of people being served in the community. And we, that particular nonprofit, came into this process through the suggestion, I think, of a chief of staff at one point who suggested it to our executive director. So in terms of some of the things that you've said tonight, it's a little confusing to me. There was a, whether you'd call it a grant application or what, there was a process. It had to be, had to follow certain guidelines. It did have to be turned in. by a certain date to Linda Gardner, and as I say, an evaluation process afterward. And we did come into the process somewhere along the line, so when you say nobody can be added and nobody can be deleted, I don't understand where that concept came from either.
Actually, there's no formal process to add or delete. People can be added, but it's very ad hoc and frankly with no process.
Well, you could be deleted by not funding that particular group, right? I mean, from one year to the next, you don't necessarily
we've never
have to
proven that.
accept it, or you have to, have to reduce the amount that they are given, or things along that line. And certainly, there's enough public notice in connection with what we do with nonprofits if somebody wanted to apply, just as Pilot House did, because Pilot House is a relatively newcomer to the process. So I just don't understand some of what you've said was not in place. It certainly seems to me that it has been in place for some time. And I really would like to know what the new application process is. Thank you.
Representative Donovan? Let me just steal this. Sure. Sorry.
John Donovan, District 1. Thank you for the presentation. The version we got didn't have all the extra data you read through. I only got like a 3-page deck.
Oh.
So with the other information that you went through, it'd be great.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and I think
I only
other
submitted one
people also-
version, so I don't know how that happened.
No problems. I went back and pulled the minutes from December 23rd, 2010. The meeting agreed to issue a report by February 1st, 2011 that includes an issue statement, philosophical statement on why the town believes it should or shouldn't support nonprofits, legal requirements, and a final policy to include a process for the current nonprofits to stay as recipients of town funds, and the process to get or added to be added or deleted from the list. Fairfield Daily Voice wrote an article June 8, 2012. After separating required payments from voluntary donations, the group will debate whether Fairfield's taxpayers should make any contributions to nonprofits at all. If it decides that the town should, it will then lay out criteria and a formal process for charities to make their cases to Fairfield leaders. There's also minutes from June 2012, and I don't believe the subcommittee met in 2013. As we go and we look at this process, it doesn't seem like it's come a long way since then. And as I look at it, I'm completely against the idea of lump summing it all up. Put in place some performance metrics. Look at the way, what do these entities provide to the town? They have ideas of what they provide. They know how many people walk through the doors. Starting to get that performance metrics in place, and then keeping the transparency so that this group has a look at that and has a vote in it and doesn't really give it up. I don't think comparing it to the Board of Education from the standpoint of lump sum, that's where it seems like there's a lot of heat and debate as it is. So making more lump sum departments I don't think is the right way to go. Thanks.
Representative Marks?
Alan Marks, District 6. Thanks for the presentation. I'm not going to echo too much of what you've heard already. I did not get any of the material before the meeting, so I may have misunderstood something of what you said. But I am concerned by one piece that I heard. I thought you had said this would be handled as a lump sum, that the different nonprofits would ask for a certain amount of money, that would go into a lump sum, and then that would, if it's approved, would then be handled by a third party. If that's correct, there's just a central question of fairness here. If a nonprofit, XYZ nonprofit, asks for $20,000, they state their case, that's approved by the selectmen, by the Board of Finance, by the RTM, they have every expectation of getting that, and then the third party decides not to give them that money for some reason. There's just a central question of fairness here, which doesn't make sense to me. So that's something I hope you would consider.
Representative Jacob?
Just so I'm 100% clear, these recommendations have been made to the Board of Selectmen and First Selectmen. Nothing's been enacted yet, so. So you're talking to the right guy here, I guess.
Hi, Ellen Jacob, District 9. I would have loved to have seen your committee, and maybe it can still do this, sort through what looked like to be many overlapping missions of these nonprofits. There were so many that were in social services of one kind or another, or mental health, or help with addictions. I would have loved to have seen some kind of consolidation or cooperation among the ones that had similar missions. But I do have to agree with my colleagues that if you cut us out of that budget voting process, voting individually, you're really cutting out our constituents, because we are the only board that really represents our neighbors. I get emails about
Really?
our
Sorry to hear that.
neighbors, our neighbors, our neighborhoods. We're specific to our neighborhoods that we serve. So if you eliminate that voice, that eliminates them too. Thank you.
Representative Steele.
Thank you. Jeff Steele, District 2. I just want to start with a question. To put this in place, what has to happen here? Do we vote on this change, or is just Board of Selectmen, or what would the process be to actually change this, first of all?
Thank you. The committee was in fact formed, as Chris went through, by the first selectman, Board of Selectmen back in, you said 2010? 2010. It was reported to the Board of Selectmen on January 29th, yes, sir. 2014. We got the handout kind of that morning. We've had one presentation. Chris was good enough to take us through that afternoon. The Board of Selectmen hasn't had time to discuss this yet. Given we're stepping right into the budget process, we looked at it and saying changing at this point would be a little hard in this season, given the timing of when we got the information and not having time to discuss it. So we've put it on our to-do list. So as soon as this budget season is over, we're going to reconvene that, raise our questions, and see if there's any more work for the committee to do, or whether we take it from there.
But after you approve or not approve, let's say you approve, does that then officially come to us to approve? Have we determined that? It says that in the handout.
Yeah.
I just want to be certain if this change...
Simply put, no. All right? The budget process is determined by the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen. That's it.
Okay, so we really have no say in changing this
Yeah.
to the proposed
And
way.
specifically, the format of the budget, if you go back to the town charter, is defined by the Board of Finance.
Okay, and then I'll just make a couple of comments. Thank you. I think setting up this whole task force was a good idea, definitely a good idea. And I even think setting up an independent committee is a good idea. I just think the one portion that we seem to have some issues with, at least the ones we've heard, is, yes, making this one lump sum. And it's not necessarily taking our power away, but I think Ellen kind of mentioned it's taking away from the people. And no, we're not the only ones who represent the people, but we certainly are in this body. And we look at every one of these individual not-for-profit organizations. We vet them, we discuss them, we hear from them, we make votes on their individual purpose and objective and criteria. So we've been very carefully looking at all of them, and I think to just do this as a lump sum takes away from that whole process. And it does put it into the hands of a non-governmental body. It's an appointed body. It's not an elected body. It's not necessarily, I mean, it could be an expert body on non-for-profits itself, but what about the specific issues? And I think it's something that we go through carefully every year. Why couldn't we have an independent task force that's set up that does set criteria, eligibility requirements, and objectives, and purpose, and procedures, and that follows them and tracks for financial and operational performance and benchmarks, but doesn't make the final determination where the money goes? I think it's sort of an oversight committee that would be fine. It continues to follow the not-for-profits, track them, and see how they're doing, and really if they're meeting their objectives and helping the town. I think that's good. They then provide a recommendation to Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, to us. It's a report. Here's a report on the not-for-profits. You know, go ahead, vote. But to give them the additional ability to determine where that money goes, I think it takes it out of everyone's hands, and most importantly, you know, out of the citizens here.
If I may. So I just want to be 100%,
Yes.
100% clear, you know. If the process were to go forward as stated, we would not just be taking away the voting, individual voting from this body. We would also be recommending we take it away from the Board of Finance as well. So I certainly don't want this body to think that we're, you know, taking away something from you and, you know, not from the Board of Finance.
No, I wasn't implying that at all. I think just even taking away from all of us, all elected officials, because we all collectively represent the town, and not just the RTM that represents the town. So
Right.
I just giving it to an independent third party is I just don't think it's the proper way to do this.
Right. And
But
just
the
as-
rest of the task force's objectives, I think, are fine.
I'm with you 100%. Now, I'm also just coincidentally chairman of the budget subcommittee. So let me just state for the record that, you know, we're here having this discussion, here having this discussion with you so that you are included in the budget process, even though I think the first selectman accurately stated probably what the charter requirements are, right? We don't have to ask, but we certainly are here having that discussion for
And we
everyone to have.
appreciate that.
Selectman McCarthy Vahey.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you to Mr. DeWitt for doing the presentation. I just want to provide a little bit of context for this. I actually served on the nonprofit subcommittee in the previous administration as an RTM member, having had a lot of questions about how the budget process worked. So just some context and history, one of which is that we spend a significant amount of time discussing the not-for-profits during our budget cycle. So it had been expressed in previous years by the Board of Finance that having a lump sum amount might be appealing to some, which was partly why that conversation came forward. I personally actually abstained on this vote, didn't vote just because of the timing and the nature of that. I acknowledge, yeah, we didn't meet for a long time, and so this conversation was not advanced in the way that we should have. And a couple things just about the lump sum and the idea of giving it to a third party. I actually and Mr. DeWitt spoke with a number of other communities to try and get a sense of models that worked. Greenwich is one community that we spoke to, and I actually met with them. And to Mr. Representative Donovan's point, here's just an example of some of the metrics that they provide and follow. They have a staff person that spends 40% of the time, clearly a different budget scenario, but that town spends a lump sum and then has an appointed body that is part of the Social Services or Human Services Commission that does this work in conjunction with the staff person. So that was one of the models that we looked at. Norwalk, for example, has a clear outline and application. So to the point that Representative Way was making, the open process means that any nonprofit has the ability to publicly and openly enter into the process, and those criteria are clear. So I just wanted to provide some of that context. I, having sat in your seats for 3 terms, am very aware of the desire for people to have specific conversations. And I think that, as was asked before by Representative Steele, this conversation will need to continue. I'm very supportive of it continuing at the Board of Selectmen level so that we understand, one, a more effective way to go through the budget process to more fairly have the conversation for the nonprofits, but also for all of us who are going through the budget process. So I I just want to say, for my part, I hear the concerns that are being raised here today and wanted to provide some of that context as well. Thank you.
Representative Iacono.
Pam Iacono, District 9. I think collectively what we've heard from people on both sides of the aisle is that we really don't want this to move to a lump sum situation. So I hope that you seriously consider that as you move this along its path. And thank you also for acknowledging that this really didn't move as quickly as you wanted it to. I know it's hard. We're all volunteers. It's next to near impossible to get schedules together. But I'm just wondering, should, in the event that the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Finance or whoever it is that has the ultimate decision-making on these particular recommendations decides that this is not where you want to go, how quickly would a new committee reconvene, or what would be the steps then to address the issues that are still outstanding?
I'll take a first cut if you want. Well, first off, let me address the gap in time that we didn't meet. I take full responsibility for that as the chairman. In fact, when we convened again, my first action was to ask if the committee wanted a new chairman, because I clearly didn't execute the charter of our committee for that 1 year, for various reasons. But I did offer my last slide to the recommendations of the Board of Selectmen that I will continue on this, if so desired, to bring this to closure, and this next round, having all this data, will not take this long. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm ready to go as soon as you're ready to reconvene, or as soon as the Board of Selectmen is ready to redirect us.
Simply, I think the Board of Selectmen needs to have that discussion, see where we are, see where these line up in terms of what we think, how many steps need to be taken, what the process is, how close to closure we think we are in terms of doing that. So once we have that, I'm not sure we need to form another committee, but I also haven't talked about it with my colleagues, so I don't want to say we won't. And if we do, that might be a very specific charge, much narrower than the first one, to clear up a few items on that.
Thank you. I think that'd be helpful. I just have a follow-up to that. If you were to go down that road, I would just recommend, for this body, since we have to hear this and consider it, if we could get some kind of regular reporting on it, that would be helpful, just so we know where everybody is in the process. I think regular updates to where it's reasonable, again, knowing we're all volunteers and this is difficult to get to us, I think that would be really helpful. And then my last request is just, I sound like a broken record, but many of us are new, but if we could get a copy of the original charge dating back to 2010, that will just help put things in context for a lot of us. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from any members? Representative Ambrose.
And on a high note.
Yes.
Peter Ambrose, District 2, through you, Mr. Moderator, to the First Selectman. I'm just a little confused because the recommendation of the NFP specifically states in this section 2 that this change in process to be approved by the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and the RTM. So I assume, therefore, that if there's a change in the process, it must come before us. And I think, am I correct in my analysis? I thought you might have stated, Mike, that it's not within our ambit.
Yeah, we got a presentation on this last January 29th. We haven't time to go back and discuss it, but I'm not sure that what's described here is the process that we follow. I think the charter clearly defines that the format of the budget is defined by the Board of Finance. All right. In terms of the process we follow, the Board of Selectmen hasn't had time to accept any of these recommendations or reject any of these recommendations. So that's kind of where we are at this point.
Perhaps we should get an opinion from our town attorney as to this process, and does the RTM have any say in the change in the process? I would merely request that this be looked into and reported back to us.
That seems entirely reasonable.
Thank you.
Selectman Vehy.
Thanks, Mr. Moderator. Just as a second follow-up, your representatives from the RTM are not here tonight, but they were adamant, as was I, having served, that we knew that the bodies would want to have input. But again, we at the Board of Selectmen haven't had that conversation. That's why that language was included, because there was very much the sense that the bodies would want to have input into that decision, and that's why it was put in. We did not consult with the town attorney at the time. It was simply a matter of recognizing what the bodies would want to do and have a say.
Thank you, Peter Ambrose, District 2. But does input also mean to approve the change in process?
So again, that was what the committee's discussion was that night, to take to the Board of Selectmen. And the Board of Selectmen, as the first selectman said, we had a report, but we had some questions and some conversation, but we did not come to any resolution that night.
Thank you.
Representative Bateson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ed Bateson, District 3. Sorry, I just need more clarification. To Mr. Tetra, you just said something about the Board of Selectmen acting on this, but a couple minutes ago I just heard that under the charter or whatever you're saying, that it's the Board of Finance that adopts this policy. Why would it be referred back to the Board of Selectmen if it's just a budget matter or budget outline that is under the purview of only the Board of Finance?
What I said, and if you read the charter, it talks about the format of the budget being defined by the Board of Finance, not the policy and process and everything leading up to that, which is a lot of what this talks about also, but just the format. So maybe the simplest way to say that is if the Board of Finance votes to turn this into one line item, they can choose to do that.
Okay, based upon what I'm hearing, I see some Board of Finance members here. I really think that you should take a step back and not go the one line item route, because
I'm not suggesting anything, Mr. Bateson.
I'm just seeing that in the room, so
you had asked how the process worked. That was just an illustrative example. The Board of Selectmen has not discussed it, so the Board of Selectmen may or may not choose to go with any of the recommendations on here. We just have not had time to discuss it.
Okay, I really think when it comes time to discuss that, both bodies sit down and, review the tape on this and, hear what we're saying. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that, again, these are not Board of Selectmen recommendations. The Board of Selectmen hasn't had time to review those. We will take that time when we did. We knew we couldn't do it in time for this budget season, so we wanted to make sure we had time to have that discussion. To be fair to the not-for-profits, as well as to be fair to the elected bodies, that everybody's still involved in the process.
Any other questions? David Becker, Board of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So, thank you, Mr. DeWitt, for your time on this, and to the other members. I know Ms. McCarthy-Vehy is here, along with some of the RTM members that spent a fair amount of time over the past couple of years, even with the delays, on doing this. If I could just kind of echo some of the comments from Representative Ambrose and then some of the concern from Representative Bateson. If in that opinion, without getting too complicated here, when they talk about the process, this is mainly, I guess, to the first selectman, but when they talk about that process, if we can get a little better understanding, not just on, because we're hearing Board of Finance on the budget side, we're hearing a little bit about it's got to go back, and then the Board of Selectmen has to possibly do something with it. It really would be helpful. I appreciate the committee wanting to involve all of the bodies, so that seems to be a sentiment all around, but if we can just make sure we understand everyone's role in that. And also, if we can look into, on my end, I'm concerned with anything that removes kind of an electoral backstop to an action. So if it's a lump sum, if we can really get a better handle on maybe even how those other communities handle it. I know the charters can be a little bit different, but even if the Board of Finance, and I can say I'm adamantly opposed to doing one lump sum, but I'm only one of 9, if the Board of Finance were to go that route or the Board of Selectmen were to try based upon how that's set up, you're talking about handing money kind of off to other entities, and I think that's a really important thing. And a lot of times in this town couldn't survive without the many appointed volunteer boards, and they're very crucial. But I get a little bit leery sometimes when some of them do things and then people turn around and ask elected officials, well, this such and such happened. And I go, well, nothing I can do about it. They're an appointed board. Now, those boards often are structured through state or local, or our charter very clearly. This may not be. This may be appointed by the boards or something to that effect. So I'd really like to make sure that we really understand that before even possibly taking anything away from the elected officials. I think that what has happened, especially during the downturn, is a much deeper look by all of the bodies into these budgets. So kind of taking a step back would concern me. So I would just want to really get a handle on that in whatever sort of opinion we were able to create. But I appreciate the work of the committee. I think it's heading on the right track. I'm noticing already, and I think we had an email in the last day or two, even more metrics coming in actually from the First Selectman's office. That's a great thing. That's really important. We're asking of all the departments in town. We should be asking of all the nonprofits as well. So some of these recommendations are already in effect, and that's great. I'm just looking at this kind of next stage, which personally makes me just a little bit leery. So thank you.
Yeah, I guess the simplest thing is I just asked for some patience so the Board of Selectmen can do what they charged this committee. We recharged it a couple of years ago, I think, and we really would like time to review the recommendations of a committee that we set up to make some recommendations as to and provide some guidance as to how we deal with the not-for-profits. Until we've had that discussion, I think all the input is good, but I just wouldn't get overly concerned until we've had that time to have that conversation. And we'll take it one step at a time from there. And certainly, any legal advice or guidance we need based on the type of changes we make would be part of that. All right? But there is nothing in here that the Board of Selectmen is obligated to follow. None of these recommendations are binding at this point. So we just need to see kind of where that discussion goes. With the overall interest of improving the process and improving the clarification and guidance we give the not-for-profits in terms of how they provide services, how we're going to measure those services, and how we hope to invest money in those services for our citizens.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. DeWitt. We appreciate your report and your answers, and I hope you won't be adverse to coming back.
No, come on. This is nothing compared to what I do.
Thank you again. All right, moving on. Item number 4 is to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Whereas the South Central Regional Water Authority, as agent for the South Central Regional Council of Governments and participating municipalities, has undertaken the permitting, construction, and operation of a regional facility for the collection of household hazardous waste, and conditionally exempt small quantity generator business waste at its headquarters at 90 Sergeant Drive in New Haven. And whereas the municipalities participating in the facility are able to have residents drop off their household hazardous waste on Saturday mornings from 9 a.m. until noon, and conditionally exempt small quantity generators deliver business waste on Saturday morning by appointment from 7 a.m. till 8:30 a.m. from spring through fall for proper processing, transportation, and disposal. And whereas the facility is owned, managed, and operated under the supervision of the South Central Connecticut Regional Water Authority for the benefit of the participating municipalities, now therefore be it resolved that the town of Fairfield declares its commitment to continue participation in the Regional Household Hazardous Waste Collection Center for a minimum 3-year period, which is July 1, 2014 through June 30th, 2017, and confirms its intent to contribute financially for the operation, processing, transportation, and disposal of household hazardous waste, and further resolved that First Selectman Michael C. Tetro be and hereby is authorized to enter into an agreement with the South Central Connecticut Regional Water Authority for the operation of the facility. Such agreement will permit the authority to act as its agent, to maintain the facility, to contract with a vendor for the transportation and disposal of waste, to receive financial support from grant sources, to enter into agreements with other municipalities, and to operate the facility. Do I have a motion? Representative Gottlieb. Hochberg, excuse me. All right, that's one. And see, now I'm going to forget everybody. Representative Dean, thank you. I know. It just takes one little goof. All right. Is there a discussion? Representative Marmion.
Sheila Marmion, District 6. Through you, Mr. Moderator, to Mr. Dombrowski.
Zambrowski.
I knew I was... Say that again for me.
Zambrowski.
Zambrowski, please. I know, well, come on up. I apologize. So I have a question for you.
Mike, would you like to come up here so you can put your book down?
My question is,
Thank you for the suggestion.
if we didn't do this, and I, say, had hazardous waste, and I didn't have the opportunity to drop it off once a year in Fairfield, where could I go in the state of Connecticut?
You would have to hire somebody.
I would have to hire somebody privately to take it somewhere that's officially sanctioned for...
Correct.
Okay. So
None
if...
of those towns are open to us. We, as the Haz Waste Central in New Haven, we as a member, only our towns could participate, just like the other towns in the state have their own groups. Only the member towns can participate with their own collections.
Okay, so the rationale for all of this is that it gives us the opportunity to deposit of this hazardous waste in an environmentally friendly way so that we're not dumping it into our backyard, into our streams, et cetera.
Correct.
And secondly, many people wouldn't take that opportunity because they'd have to go that extra step to hire somebody,
Correct.
you know, to get rid of the waste.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Devlin.
Hey, thanks for reading that. That was good.
Hi, Laura Devlin, District 3, and a member of the Finance Committee. So, Mr. Zambrowski, first of all, thank you. I had submitted some questions on behalf of the Finance Committee to get a little bit more clarification on some of the costs, and I appreciate the information that you shared. There were a couple of questions that, and the time frame was a little bit brief. Honestly, I didn't get the feedback till this afternoon and shared it with the Finance Committee this afternoon. There were a couple of questions that we really didn't get a sufficient answer to, and those specific questions were, one, and let me preface this by saying, certainly I do, and I think everybody in the Finance Committee and probably everybody in this room supports the notion that we provide hazardous waste disposal service to our citizens in the town. So that isn't a question of doing it or not doing it. But we are looking closely, of course, at costs and economies, as every where within the budget just because things are so tight. So the two questions were, first of all, household participation rates from the past several years for both the annual collection event and then those residents that go to New Haven. And I know at the Finance Committee meeting, there was a total of 885 residents. It was 111, I think, that go to New Haven and 700 and some odd that go to the event. So, we wanted to get a little bit of that history, but the other was the cost per household and participation rate for other surrounding towns in Fairfield County that don't participate as a member of the South Central Connecticut Regional Water Authority. So, towns like Westport and other neighboring communities here that do offer similar services. And I know you responded that that information wasn't available and did provide some other areas.
Yes.
But we'd like to see if we couldn't get some of that information. So I do have a question for you. If we were to put this over to the next meeting, which is April 28th, would it jeopardize at all the town receiving this kind of service come later in the year?
Well, as long as we have it July 1, we have a yay or nay. I mean,
Okay.
it was, did you see the towns, the municipalities on the list I have?
Trumbull,
Correct.
Central,
I mean,
Naugatuck.
you've got a, Bridgeport, for example, has got only 350 participants through the whole city. I mean, it's not a given. A lot of these towns or a lot of these residents don't have as much participation as Fairfield.
So maybe if it wouldn't jeopardize the town by moving this to a later date, we could get a little bit more information and really understand what the options are. Right now we pay on average, $60 per person, and we know that there aren't economies of scale, that it's a per household, rate.
Correct.
So we don't know what other neighboring town, what their costs are, and there may be some other viable options open to us. So if we could get that additional information, I would like to move that we put this item over to another date certain, to which would be the next meeting, in order to have that information and make a decision.
Okay, I'll try. I've already called these towns, and they haven't got back to me with these numbers. I've called Westport. Trumbull gave me numbers in Monroe. So, and here also, there are 50 towns that I got information for, or from, in this group.
So maybe it's understanding, and for our committee's benefit as well, what this list of the towns are. And maybe there's
Okay.
something we missed from the spreadsheet, but
Because they're all different. It's not like going to Stop and Shop or ShopRite. They all have different collections, and with this group that we have, I mean, if we stop the collection tomorrow, we could have a couple of households that can have spills that can double to triple this budget for hazardous waste cleanup.
well, that's why I wanted to make clear, A, that we wouldn't jeopardize service if we were to move this. And from the very beginning, as I stated, we're not proposing that we don't offer hazardous waste service. It's really understanding more thoroughly what actually it is that we're approving and feeling good, or not approving and feeling good about that decision.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Representative Marmion, have you made a motion? Devlin, I'm sorry.
I did.
No, that's three.
Would you like me to read? That's right, I'll respond. Would you like me to state that again?
Yes, please.
So I would like to move to put this item over to a date certain, which will be the next meeting, April 28th, in order to have time to receive the information.
All right, so is there a second on that? Representative McCarthy? Yes.
Yes, if I could, Tom McCarthy, District 8, I just want to dovetail on what Representative Devlin said. Mike, if you remember in subcommittee, one of the questions I had asked you, are you satisfied that this is a competitive rate? And you said, yes, we are, and I have a great comfort level with that. But if one of my constituents were to ask me, why do you think we're getting a competitive rate? I can't very well say, well, I've got on good authority. It's something that I owe it to them that I need to review the numbers myself so I can speak with authority as well and say, yes, I've looked at the numbers support the fact. So again, to dovetail on what Representative Devlin said, we'd just like to have some metrics, some industry standard per ton against which we would compare the rate we're paying and say, yeah, we're getting competitive rates. So, so I do second Representative Devlin's motion. If you could get that to us, those numbers. And like I say, Mike, you know, we have great faith in you, but it's not just that. I can't look somebody in the eye and say, yeah, trust me. You know, I've got on good authority. I need to look them in the eye and say, yeah, I looked at the numbers and they're right.
Okay.
Okay.
Representative Garskoff.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Josh Garskoff, District 5. So I'm not on the Finance Committee, and I just took a quick look at the emails, but I'm not 100% sure of what we're asking, what information we're asking for before we vote on this. And I'm not against holding it off. I just want to be clear about what we're asking for.
So we did receive some information, and we're appreciative of that. But the specific information that we're asking, there's two questions for which the answers we'd like to have a little bit more clarity on. One was that for the town of Fairfield, the household participation rates for the past years for both the annual collection event and those Fairfield residents that take advantage of taking their own hazardous waste to the New Haven facility. So there's the annual event at Veterans Park. We have the numbers from last year. We were looking for a little bit more. More so in terms of having an understanding of the costs was, and what we were looking at is a cost per household and participation rate, although Representative McCarthy also brings up some good metrics because those were the metrics that were shared at the Finance Committee. We were looking at per household, number of the household and participation rate. So that's what we were asking for. For the other towns in Fairfield County surrounding Fairfield. So right now, Fairfield is the only community within Fairfield County that participates in the South Central Connecticut Regional Water Authority. So what we want to know is, so Westport does an annual collection. What is their cost? Is that, are there other options for us as a community? And again, I guess I agree with Representative McCarthy's sentiment. We have to be able to look someone in the eye to say, well, why did you vote this way, or to back up the numbers. So that was the other piece of information that we were looking for. Does that answer your question?
Representative Smay.
Mr. Moderator, to Mr. Dabrowski, isn't this a consortium? Isn't it it's a consortium,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And so we pay our equal share with the other 3 towns, correct?
16 towns.
16 towns. So if we were to disengage from this consortium, what would it cost the town of Fairfield to be responsible for its own removal of waste?
We would have to go out and we would have to bid, find a bidder, we'd have to go out to the bid process, and we would have to, I don't know what it would cost.
You have no idea. But then that amount is broken down, divided by 16 towns, correct?
It's a per user fee. So the towns, the one line item, the operations budget is $16,907 that we pay. It's for operation of the facility, maintenance, and other auditing, security. And the other fee is our per user fee, that when the households use our Hasway Central or at our collection in Fairfield, we are charged $42 per household.
Per household. Thank you.
Representative Marks? No?
3 for 3.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Alan Marks, District 6. While Representative Devlin was speaking, I thought of something that might be better saved for the meeting where we're actually going to vote on this, but I won't remember a month from now. So I thought I would mention it now, and that is if Mr. Zimbrowski comes back with the numbers that you've asked for about the costs of other towns, and for instance, and I'm just throwing some numbers out here, let's say Westport, for instance, spends $0 on hazardous waste. That doesn't mean that there isn't a cost for that as well. They may have people dumping hazardous waste that they don't know about. And also, I just did a quick search on Google, and if we did not have this program, there are people you can hire to come and take your hazardous waste away for a cost. Everyone in Westport might be doing that at their cost, so again, those numbers are not going to be factored into what he's coming back with. So it's really the cost of not doing it, of finding out what hazardous waste is around, as well as other ways of doing this. So just, when he comes back with whatever numbers it is, there is a lot that has to be weighed into that. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thanks.
Representative Schwartz?
Hal Schwartz, District 7. Mike, do you know if the other towns in Fairfield County that we're talking about or comparing ourselves to actually offer a service for their residents on a town-wide basis, or is it done as an individual basis?
Westport, some of the towns like Westport, Greenwich, Norwalk have the collections that the residents can use. And as a matter of fact, I didn't get the information yet. I apologize. But there is a cost for those towns, and they can use the other towns. Westport can use Greenwich, like I said, and I guess Greenwich can use Westport, and Norwalk could use Greenwich, but they don't have a high turnout.
So, but these towns now, do they charge their residents when they
No.
drop them off? So they have a line item in their budget, and this is what it's going to cost us based on their history, just like we have a line item in our budget
Yes.
based on our history.
Yes.
And they also probably figure it on a per household basis as well as we do. Thank you.
Representative Hawkins?
Kevin Hopkins, District 7. I cannot imagine that putting this out to bid and having this done separately would be any cheaper than sharing the cost with the other towns that participate in this program. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't see why putting this off is going to give us any benefit. We know the total amount we pay. It's a small amount of money in our total budget for what is truly a great program for us to participate in. I wish more people participated in it, and rather than worrying about the cost, we should probably be spending a little bit more to publicize this program and make sure more people get involved in it. But I don't see how putting this off is going to help anything. We really should get this done now. Let's not put this off to another time. Thank you.
Representative Bateson?
Ed Bateson, District 3. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. When I saw this on the agenda, I just assumed this was going to be a slam dunk. This is something we've done several years on the RTM. And that's why I love having new members on the RTM, because they bring a fresh perspective to everything. And there was a set of questions that came about that, quite frankly, I haven't considered in 5 or 6 years that I thought were good questions, and I think we should revisit them. There was a set of questions that were answered, but that led to more questions. And I got to appreciate the new perspective that I'm hearing. If it's not going to hurt delaying it for 30 days so those questions can be answered, quite frankly, I'm looking at it through a fresh set of eyes just by hearing their questions, and it's going to help me get get to where I want to be to say, yeah, this is the best option out there. So I'll support the, the motion to postpone.
Any other questions from any other representatives? Representative Braun.
Kathy Braun, District 8. Can you just recap the dollars and cents and whether it's gone up from the prior? This is a 3-year commitment.
Correct.
And was there a prior 3-year commitment before this?
Yes.
And I'm looking at my notes. I think for this program, the fixed cost was $16,000, and then there's a variable cost depending on how many people use it of $50 a head or
$42, yes.
Okay, and that could go up to another $35,000, or how did that work? I have the number 35,000 written here for a total of 51,000. I didn't understand how those numbers worked. Maybe that was an example you were using. If X amount of people came and used the program, it would be X amount of dollars?
Yeah, it's a per-user fee, so
Okay,
whatever
okay.
the numbers you pick.
Are any of these unit costs different or higher than the prior 3-year contract we had?
No, it's all based on a 15 gallons of hazardous waste, or 20 pounds. And one thing also I want to mention, that we give 21 collections. We have 21 collections that our residents can use versus these other towns with 1 or 2.
By 21, you mean 21 days during the year?
Correct.
Okay.
One in Fairfield and the other 21 up in New Haven.
Okay.
So-
The one in Fairfield, is that just one day, or is that?
Correct, it's
okay.
one day.
And is there a way that you could, within your existing budget, promote this so that we get more use of it? Because I'm inclined to support this, because I think the program is as successful as anyone else's program. The price hasn't gone up. I think it's very valuable. People generally wanted to find the easy way to recycle, and you don't want people dumping batteries out. So I'm inclined to just support it. You've told us the price is not higher than it was before, but is there a way that you could, within your existing budget, perhaps promote it a little more heavily so we can get more use of it?
We can go through the media, electronic, we can do it with the town, and every year I send out brochures to each household, so just continue as is, and to have the RTM members get the word out.
And the date, is there any impact on the program if it is delayed another month for us to approve the program? Like, in other words, when it's going to happen?
The delay, as I was thinking, you're going to be voting on my budget within a couple of weeks, and this is budgeted in that.
Mm-hmm.
So I will start getting the numbers together, so maybe we can have it, when I'm proposing my budget here, I'll have those numbers for you at that time. So you may want to rethink your motion.
Yeah, I think in light of the history, I think it's a valuable program. I'm not going to support the motion to postpone it personally. Thank you.
Representative Smay.
Thanks.
Mr. Dabrowski.
Zembrowski.
Dabrowski, I'm
Zem.
sorry.
Z.
Dabrowski, okay. I'm very sorry, I apologize.
Just say Mike Z. Okay.
Mike Z is very good.
Thank
I
you.
like that better.
Thank you.
Mike Z.
Mike
I
T,
just
Mike
happened
Z.
to look, we just looked up the data. Every single town in the state of Connecticut participates in a consortium to eliminate the hazardous waste. So on that information, I'm going to vote against this amendment. Did you want to say something, Pat?
No, I was going back on some records, and based on some of the materials that we've taken out of a household in Fairfield, there was enough material in this household that there'd be enough for 10 Superfund sites in Fairfield. So there's a lot of material out there, so I promote, get rid of this stuff and keep it. Yes, thank you. Oh, okay, thank you.
Representative Devlin.
Hmm? Ready. Mercury?
Yeah.
Two pounds could be
Laura Devlin, District 3, and member of the Finance Committee. Mr. Zembrowski, I think it's unanimous that everybody agrees this is a valuable program and you do a great job with it. Can you confirm, the participation rate? Right now we have 887 households that participate at a cost to us for just that piece of about $35,700 a year?
We get a total of about 1,000 a year.
Okay.
We have the 875 plus the 125 is our average residents going to New Haven. So
And I think it's an average cost without splitting up the set fee of $16,700. So if we left that separate, it's a per household cost of about $42.
Correct.
But we don't receive any economies of scale. So when we promote this program, which everybody says is super, and we double the participants, we're going to double our costs.
Correct.
Right? Okay. Just wanted to state that. And I do think that, it's fair, amounts large or small that come before us as a body, that we really look at them. We have budgets coming for us that there's a lot of passion for $50,000 to be able to put a director in the senior center. So I don't think we can say, oh, it's a small amount, let's not pay attention. So thank you.
Sure.
Any other members? Seeing none, any members of the public that would like to address this? Seeing none, back to the membership. All right, we're going to vote on the amendment to postpone this item to a date certain of our next RTM meeting, and we're going to have a roll call vote.
Sean Donovan?
Oh, I'm sorry. A yes vote will postpone, a no vote will be against the postponement.
Yes. Could I just have a clarification? Did you not say that we are going to have to vote on budget figures, though, for this particular item in 2 weeks' time?
Yes, next, that is part of our budget. That's part of my budget for next year.
Let's just clarify from a budget standpoint. The Board of Selectmen will vote on March 31st, April 1st. The Board of Finance will vote on April 3rd. It then comes to this body. You'll have individual meetings, I think the 7th, 8th, and 9th. The 28th, you typically discuss the budget, and the first Monday in May, you actually vote on the budget. The challenge will be is that this body can only approve or lower costs. You cannot increase costs.
So that was why, excuse me, but that was why you were then stating that you were concerned about 2 weeks from now.
Correct.
Okay. Just because we would not be able to make changes that these figures might represent.
Yes.
All right, back to the vote. Yes. Can you use the mic? Alan Jacob.
Missed Alan Jacob, District 9. I missed what Carol Way was trying to clarify, and Mike was about if it's, I thought, Mike, you said that it was going to be in the budget as presented, and that, okay, thank you.
What Mr. Zembrowski said is that he has based his department's budget on the proposal in front of you. That's how he got his numbers. Now, assuming that is the least expensive option that is still acceptable to this body, when you vote, you can just approve that, and you're fine. If there's a cheaper option, if that's not known by the time the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance votes, you would still be able to modify this and use the cheaper option.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that help?
Yes.
Is that okay, Mike?
Good with me, Mike.
Okay.
All right, so a yes vote is a vote in favor of postponing.
John Donovan.
No.
Gaylord Meyer.
No.
Eric Sunman.
No.
Pete Ambrose.
Yes.
Catherine Burstein. Yes. Jeff Steele.
Yes.
Keith Varian.
No.
Ed Bateson.
Yes.
Laura Devlin. Yes. Hank Ferentz.
Yes.
Dave McKenzie.
Yes.
Heather Dean. No. Joe DiMartino. Bill Gerber.
Yes.
Joe Palmer.
Yes.
Cindy Waldron. No. Josh Garskoff.
Yes.
Bruce May.
No.
Carol Way.
No.
Alan Marks.
No.
Sheila Marmion.
Yes.
Jay Wolf.
No.
Liz Ezema.
No.
Jen Hochberg.
No.
Kevin Hopkins.
No.
Eric Newman.
No.
Phil Pierce.
No.
Hal Schwartz.
No.
Kathy Braun. No. Alex Durrell.
No.
Jason Lee.
No.
Tom McCarthy.
Yes.
Jeff Milorano.
Yes.
Pam Iacono.
Yes.
Ellen Jacob. Yes. Lori McCardle.
Yes.
Carol Pontrelli. Yes. Chris Timiak.
Yes.
Brian Caparelli.
No.
Brian Farnan.
Yes.
Bill Perugini.
Yes.
Bruce Ryan.
Yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Oh. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the motion to postpone wins. The vote was 21-20. So, back to the, no, I'm sorry, we're done. Thank you. Mr. Zambrisky? All right, next item is item number 5. Is to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Resolved that in accordance with the recommendation from the Land Acquisition Commission, the town of Fairfield accept from Lillian E. Fazekas a donation of property known as 224 Riverview Circle, comprising approximately .12 acres, that's .12 acres. Said property to be donated subject to existing real property taxes. Do I have a motion? Representative Marks. And a second, Representative Smay. Representative Schwartz.
Thank you.
There
There it is. Hal Schwartz, District 7. Mr. Moderator, I would like to make a motion to postpone based on information that we received from the town attorney today. There is more information coming to the town on this, and I would like to postpone to a date certain, being our April meeting, to make sure that all the information that needs to be gathered can be gathered by the Board of Selectmen, and that we move this until next month if the Board of Selectmen decides to bring it back for us to vote.
All right, is there a second? Representative Ambrose. Discussion on the motion to postpone. Seeing none, we'll vote on it. Betsy?
Public?
Should I go to the public? No? All right. All right, so we'll have a voice vote on this. All in favor of postponing, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Representative Iacono. Thank you. All right, so item number 6, to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Resolved that the Town of Fairfield, 1, establish the Mill Hill School Roof Building Committee, and 2, authorize the preparation of schematic drawings and other outline specifications for this project, and 3, authorize the Board of Education to file an application for a school building grant. Do I hear a motion? Representative Smay, and seconded by Representative Iacono. Discussion on this item. Seeing none, any members of the public that would wish to discuss this? Seeing none, back to the committee. So we will vote on it. An affirmative vote is to accept the resolution as stated. So, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. Okay, thank you. All right, item number 7. The moderator has referred an amendment to Chapter 51 of the Fairfield Town Code entitled Blight Prevention, as sponsored by Peter Ambrose, District 2, Edward Bateson, District 3, Sheila Marmion, District 6, and Hal Schwartz, District 7, to the Legislation and Administration Committee under Rule 32 of the RTM Rules to Regulate. A copy of the proposed ordinance amended is attached. Representative Bateson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ed Bateson, District 3. Yeah, I presented this to LNA. We got some changes in language that was recommended, and I will submit that to the clerk, and it'll be included on the call for next month.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bateson. All right. Item number 8 is to consider and act upon any other matters to said meeting, and which may be properly acted upon under the rules of the representative town meeting. Does anyone have anything else? Representative Smay.
I think we should congratulate Representative Ambrose on his new granddaughter, Madison Emma, who was born last Monday.
Congratulations, Representative Ambrose. Anyone else? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Representative Iacono and Representative Gaylord Meyer. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for your patience.